Does your child suck his or her thumb? Hi there, I'm Denise Richardson from Howdini.com. We're talking about that right now, so pay attention. We have a great guest, Ann Pleshette Murphy, who is the author of The 7 Stages of Motherhood and a parenting contributor to Good Morning America. Every child, for the most part, sucks their thumb.
Or it sucks on something. I mean, sucking is actually an instinct and a need that's separate from feeding. You know, a lot of people think, well, they suck because they're hungry. No, it's actually a separate need, and of course, it's something that's very soothing. They release all kinds of brain chemicals when they're sucking, and so it's, you know, it's something that's not necessarily a bad thing, except that, of course, you know, it's very hard to break these habits.
So as soon as the thumb goes into the mouth, do you replace it with a pacifier?
Well, you can't. We can actually see fetuses sucking their thumbs in utero. So it's something that some kids do and some kids don't. The ones who don't, again, a lot of parents find that a pacifier is a wonderful soother. The trouble is that you then have to have a big supply of them. But it's much easier to break a child of a pacifier than the thumb, because my recommendation for getting rid of the pacifier is that at a certain point, you can restrict the pacifier to certain times of day, you know, when they're going to take a nap or when they're going to go to bed. You can also do something which sometimes works, which is you snip a little bit of the pacifier off every few days, so that at a certain point there's nothing to suck on. That has sometimes worked for friends of mine that I know whose kids were addicted to their pacifiers. You can also have like a big pacifier purge, you know, where you get a lot of other kids who use pacifiers and they all throw their pacifier in the garbage together. That sometimes works, but you can't do that with their thumbs.
So we all say, bad habit, bad habit. Mm-hmm. How do you change a bad habit? How long does it take? And does it depend on the individual?
Well, it depends on the individual. I wanted to start by saying that if the habit is part of a whole ritual of behaviors, or if it seems to be interfering with the child's life in some way, they can't socialize, they do it in a really kind of obsessive way, then I would talk to your pediatrician, because it may be part of what we call obsessive compulsive disorder. There's some habits that seem to be associated with that. But if you've got a nail biter or if you've got a thumb sucker, chances are their peers are going to shame them out of the habit. A girl who suddenly has a boy go, ugh, your nails look disgusting, is never going to bite them again. I mean, that may not be till she's 10, 11, 12, but that often is what happens.
Well, but the parent may say, you know, I'm really hoping that his friends or her friends tease them out of that stage. But maybe they won't.
Yeah, maybe they won't, and you don't really want your kid to be shamed into something. You hope that you can deal with it sooner. And one of the ways of dealing with it is, again, to do some detective work and see when they tend to do it. You know, when kids are tired, when kids are watching TV, or when they're bored or whatever, that's when the thumb goes in the mouth, or when they're, feeling anxious. So then you can help a child who's, old enough to have the habit be broken. So let's say the kid's 6, 7, 8 years old. You can say, I've noticed that when you're watching TV, you often, pull your hair or you bite your nails. So I want you to really be aware of that. And then you can give kids fidget busters or nail biting busters by giving them something to play with, so that when they are bored or they're distracted and that's when they tend to put their thumb in their mouth, give them silly putty, or give them something tactile that they can hold in their hand so that they're not putting their hands in their mouth.
And bottom line, don't beat up on your kid for that.
No, and certainly, these things of like painting their thumbs with something that tastes disgusting is really not a good idea. I mean, there used to be these kind of draconian measures that parents would take to quit, to rid their kid of these bad habits. Those are not a good idea.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Good information.
Thanks.